Hello and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and your local witch next door, and today I'm talking about tarot and rosemary. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. Thanks so much for those of you who were able to attend my virtual tarot card creation event last week. It was super fun, so if you missed out or if you signed up but were unable to make it to the live event, you should have the replay of the event recording, the PDF I made with my step-by-step process, and an offer to join my upcoming series called Tarot for Transformation, so check your emails for that. If you weren't able to attend live or didn't register in time, you can go ahead and get the full recording with my step-by-step method, examples of all the tarot cards I've created, journaling questions, and a PDF to walk you through it for just $33. So the link is in the show notes if you'd like to purchase that. And I'm going to be offering a 12-week Tarot for Transformation live course this summer. It will probably be starting at the end of August, so you still have some time to mull it over, but make sure if you're interested to get on the interest list now to sign up for more information. The link will be in the show notes for that as well. If you love the show, the best way to support it for free is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. I did just update the Patreon benefits to be bigger and better than ever. So every month I'm going to be hosting New Moon Collective Tarot readings live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and perhaps more places in the future. So everyone is able to attend that. But if you join the Lovers of the Podcast level on the Patreon, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord to chat with me during the stream, and I'll pull a card for each one of my patrons every New Moon Collective tarot spread. So once a month, you'll get an individual card pulled for you live on the podcast, and just join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family at the Lovers level. If you'd like to support the podcast even further, you can get a one-time individual 5-card reading in addition to all the other benefits if you join the Witch Bitch level on the Patreon. If you are local to the greater Puget Sound area, I have some upcoming events. So I have a full moon women's circle that is happening tonight as this episode goes out, July 10th at 7 p.m. It's a 90-minute women's circle space. It will be at Thresholds Collective in South Tacoma. So if you're listening to this episode in the morning and you still you're local and you want to attend, the link will be in the show notes to sign up for that through Eventbrite, and we hope to see you there. If you're local to me, I will be at Tacoma Pride this Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. It's in Wright Park this year, which is nice and shady, which is lovely. And I will be hosting my tarot card creation crafting there as well. So I'll have tables set up, all the craft materials, and some instructions. So if you haven't been to any of my Let's Talk Tarot meetups and you're local and you want to get to some crafting, or you need a sensory break when you're at Pride, or you're tired of walking around, you can come sit and hang out at the table. You can stop by and get a sticker for my podcast to promote the podcast for free. I'll also have links to all the other things I do, and you can say hi there or come create a card, whatever you would like. So if you're ever looking for events, if you're local to me in the greater Puget Sound area, you can check out my Let's Talk Tarot meetup group for any event postings there. All right, if you're interested in my free PDF with the 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you, my lovely listeners, at the beginning of this year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date information on upcoming events, presentations, musings, and more. And if you don't already know, I'm a sex and relationships therapist, seeing clients virtually all over Washington State. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. So if you'd like to work with a therapist that doesn't judge you, is witchy, just like you, and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, head to my website and book a free consultation now to start your journey. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull on each episode. episode. All right, so welcome to season 11 here, where I'm talking all about tarot and plant allies. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you should check those out. So in season 1, I talked tarot basics. In seasons 2 and 3, I went through all the major arcana cards and an overview of the 4 suits. In season 4, I talked tarot and pop culture. In season 5, I went through 13 common tarot spreads. And in season 6, 7, 8, and 9, I went through all the suits, so starting with wands, pentacles, swords, and cups. And then season 10, which I just wrapped up, was all about tarot and witchcraft. So as you may have gathered, I have had a tarot episode about every single tarot card, all 78 cards in a traditional deck. So if you're ever looking for a specific card episode, and you don't want to just scroll through your podcast app or the search is too hard in there, you can always go to my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, and type in the search bar at the top the name of the card you're looking for, and that episode will pop up. So if you're ever looking for a specific one, you want to get to know a card better, or you have complicated feelings about a card and you're trying to rectify that or understand more, that's a great way to do it. Okay, so like I said, we are in season 11 now, where I'm talking all about tarot and plant allies, and today I'm talking about tarot and the plant rosemary. So we're going to go through a couple things in this episode: a plant description, we're going to talk about plant magic with rosemary, we're going to talk about its relation to the tarot, and then we're going to talk about some uses of rosemary. Unlike maybe some of the other plants I've talked about thus far, rosemary is probably a plant you're familiar with, or at least an herb you're familiar with. Rosemary, I was reading some history on the plant of rosemary, and some say that it was first documented as being cultivated 5,000 years ago, I believe. So that is quite a long time. It originally comes from the Mediterranean area, and so it does like that sort of climate, which often means wet in winter, dry in summer, which actually, even though I live in the Pacific Northwest of the US, it thrives here. Lots of people where I live have what I would call old growth rosemary. It doesn't die in the winter time here. It doesn't get cold enough where I live. And so people have really thick tree-like looking rosemary, or at least bush-like looking rosemary, often as just an ornamental plant. But again, so maybe you're familiar with the herb of rosemary. Maybe you've never seen the whole plant though. So I will have a photo from the medicinal herb coloring book that I've referenced in a couple other episodes. So rosemary, also known as Rosmarinus officinalis, is a Latin name. So rosemary, perennial herb native to the Mediterranean, grown in gardens all over the world. However, rosemary is a warming, circulatory stimulant and has been used to treat issues such as varicose veins, chilblains, and arteriosclerosis, which is thickening and hardening of the walls of the arteries. Rosemary stimulates blood flow to the head, making it useful for headaches and migraines, as well as with short-term memory and focus. Rosemary can also help stimulate menstruation and relieve spasms. The essential oil is antimicrobial and useful in a first aid context. If you're allergic to aspirin, a hemophiliac, using pharmaceutical anticoagulants, or about to have a surgical procedure, don't use rosemary. Discontinue use if the blood flow to your head causes you any discomfort. So a lot of these things, I will get into some of the plant magic part of it, but rosemary as an essential oil and also as a plant is often seen as good for clarity, again, bringing blood flow to your head, so sort of helping you think or focus. So it's not necessarily a calming plant, right? You wouldn't necessarily want to be, I guess, using the essential oil in maybe the evening when you're trying to go to sleep, unlike some other ones. But it is the sort of, again, it's a warming circulatory stimulant, so it gets your blood flow going. And again, that's part of why if you're on some other medication, can be harmful if you're consuming rosemary at a medicinal level. Generally, consuming plants at a medicinal level means a lot of the plant, more than you would ever use culinarily, unless you're literally eating the same thing for every single meal for like a week or two. So just keep that in mind. And again, I am not giving out herbalist advice or telling you to use any of these plants as medicine without the advisement of a healthcare professional. So keep that in mind. We're talking generally about, again, the plant itself, magic associated with it, the relation to tarot, and some, culinary or maybe topical uses for rosemary. So again, in the plant description, if you've never seen the whole plant before, I have a large plant of it. Like I said, it grows very well in my climate. And I would say it looks like Medusa. If you know the sort of traditional depiction of Medusa, where it's like curly, like sort of wild curly hair that turn into snakes at the end. I would say that's the vibe of a rosemary plant. It's sort of shrubby. It grows on, so we'll have old wood that's like brown, and then it will get new growth all the time. So the picture I have today that I'll put with the podcast is some older growth of it, and that is what flowered recently for me. It actually now has part of the seed heads are dried up. So if you wanted to, you could start rosemary from seed from this plant. Generally, most herbs are very challenging to start from seed. It's kind of like what I was talking about last episode with evening primrose, that a lot of the plants that grow really well in almost any climate and almost any condition are actually often very challenging to start from seed. So generally with herbs, taking cuttings, which just means cutting off a snippet of it, usually of a woodier part of the plant, and then sticking it in dirt and hoping it roots. That's like what a cutting is, and then being able to grow that plant larger. So cuttings are clones of a plant, right? You're taking a part of that exact plant and you're cutting a piece off, and then you're trying to grow it bigger in your own location, in your own soil, or in water sometimes. To propagate it, whereas if you had the seeds from the plant, it is going to be genetically different perhaps. So, interesting information about plants. Let's see here. So yeah, the plant is generally green or sometimes like a greenish blue. When it flowers, it has, at least on my bush, sort of like tiny purpley blue flowers. Like I said, at the part in the summer that I am at right now, those flowers have dried up and they've turned into seed heads, which are hard. And so actually if I crush some of them, I can find the tiny little seeds that are in there. So, in theory, the rosemary could spread throughout my yard. It hasn't yet. Other things spread a lot more easily, so it definitely does better from a cutting, I would say. So if you want a rosemary plant, you don't want to buy one, if you have a friend or anyone else that has a plant, you can ask them to take a cutting for you, or when you're over at their house, get consent, but you can take a cutting of their plant, you can bring it home, put it in some soil. You can look up how to root cuttings online. There's some things that help with it. Make sure it's well watered and hope that roots grow, and then it will grow its own plant. Anyway, perennial plants take a long time to grow big. Usually takes about 3 years from when you start the plant to when it does very well and starts really growing once it's established. There's this phrase that they say about plants from seed or from a very small seedling. I'm trying to remember what it is. So it's like year 1, it creeps. Year 2, it leaps. Year 3, I'm gonna have to look it up now. Okay, I looked it up. So the phrase is, the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, the third year it leaps. So often if you get a plant, even if you get it from, a garden store or a nursery or something like that, even if it's fairly large and established, it usually will not really grow much visibly on the surface in the first year. even if you have great soil, even if you're doing all the right things, like it's often going to look like it's the same size, right? You kept it alive. Yay. We love that. But what is happening is that it's putting down roots right underneath the ground, which we can't necessarily see. But that's what you want a plant to do, is that once it's rooted, it has a lot more energy. It's tapped into, right, the soil, the earth, other microbes that are in the ground, fungal things that help it grow. And then the second year, right, it starts to creep, right, the phrase says. So it sort of starts to grow slowly, right? It starts to elongate, get extra leaves, get branches growing on that first year. Wood of the plant often. And then the third year is often really when it like doubles, triples, quadruples in size from when you first got it. So just keep that in mind. Gardening is a long-term project, especially if you're growing perennial plants, which just means that they don't die every year. Obviously, some perennial plants will be perennial in some areas and not in others. Like I said, where I live, rosemary, definitely perennial, doesn't die in the winter here. It doesn't quite get cold enough where I live, and we have super wet winters, which is what it likes, because that's what it's kind of like in the Mediterranean, even though it's warmer there than at my house. But in places where it gets very cold in the winter, or right, you don't have necessarily a lot of water, but you have a lot of wind and frost, rosemary might not do as well there, or it might die back some winters, and you might have to cut it back or protect it, or sometimes even get a new plant. So that's all stuff to keep in mind. A lot of herbs, just like rosemary, are easy to grow inside, also in containers. Like I said, my rosemary is quite large now. I'm trying to think of an explanation of how big it is. It's probably like 3 feet wide at this point, and at least a foot tall. I made an herb spiral, which is basically a sort of raised bed, but just for herbs, but it sort of spirals around. I used rocks to make a spiral, and then what you do is you have plants at the top of the spiral, so you sort of build up the soil in the middle to be the tallest, and at the edge to be the most shallow, and you sort of put your plants that really like sun and need better drainage, again like a rosemary plant, at the top, and then you sort of use the shade and other parts of this spiral of the herb spiral to sort of, basically have a culinary place for all your herbs to go. And so I have rosemary, oregano, multiple kinds of thyme, I have parsley, I have some weirder things like tarragon or marjoram or curry as well. Sometimes I have basil or other things that are a little bit wetter, but they're hard for me to keep alive in the herb spiral, and that's a thing that's definitely not perennial for me. Maybe if you live in California or a place where it stays pretty warm in the winter, you can have basil or most herbs perennially, but that's just to keep in mind. So yeah, again, it's a woodier plant. It has green, kind of like leaves, although of course that's the part that we eat. You can eat the flowers. Sometimes, again, they're put on like fancy salads at a restaurant. I would say they pretty much just taste like rosemary. They're quite small, but sometimes people will, at a fancy restaurant, they'll use like tweezers to like place rosemary flowers onto a salad, or, maybe bread or something like that. And then, again, it gets used culinarily a lot, as a common herb, either dried or fresh, often fresh, because it is sort of a resinous plant, which just means like it doesn't necessarily have a lot of water in it. It has, again, more of like a sap, like a resin, like a tree resin, type of thing. So it is like if you were to break, one of the little leaves in half, it would be kind of like sticky versus just like wet. Anyway, and yeah, so it sort of has these green leaves. They're very small, which again is good and common in like a Mediterranean climate where, again, you get a lot of water at one time of year, and then another time of year, like where I live, it's very dry. We don't really get any rain for 3 to 4 months in a row. And so we're into that point of the year now where I am, where we're probably done with the rain until like September. And I'm recording this July 8th. So we're in like the next probably 3 months of no rain. And so those smaller leaves that don't have a lot of water in them can survive during the winter. If you've ever been to a desert or very hot places that are not humid, don't have a lot of water in the air, a lot of the plants are very like waxy or small or resinous because that helps them survive during the extreme heat and very little water. So like in areas of the southwest of the US, if you go anywhere else that's sort of desert-like, that is more common there. Okay, I've talked a lot about the plant description, even though you probably know what it looks like. So let's move into the plant magic aspect of it. Yeah, so like I said, some of the associations or correspondences with rosemary. So I will be referencing the Parting the Mists blog that talks about this deck. The Herb Crafter's Tarot is what this one's from, by author Letitia Guthrie and artist Joanna Pohl Colbert. So it's a blog talking about different tarot cards, and so this is the tarot card they're talking about, but for this is rosemary. So it says rosemary is associated with the mind for communication and listening, helps sharpen the mind, and as well as flavor food, obviously. Let's see, it says it's a wild and unruly rosemary bush grows on the side of a garden shed. We see in this like tarot card that they have here, sort of a blue shed with some tools on the side of it. You see the rosemary and you see someone like holding it with small purple flowers, like I said. And it says an old woman grips a bundle of fresh sprigs in her hand, her arm decorated with a faded wing tattoo that she offers up to the sky. And this tarot card in this deck is called Curandera of Air, and Curandera, I believe, is like healer. And so that is what this is associated with in this particular, the Herb Crafter's Tarot. So there's a lot of wisdom. When I talk about the tarot card associated with it, we get into more like memories, which again, all of this is about that like mental acuity, right? Which again, if you think about that rosemary, when you eat it or use it medicinally, helps your blood flow, like that helps us think more clearly. It enhances cognitive function. It wakes us up a little bit. The mind is sharp and quick, but they really associate rosemary as sort of like, again, like as its presence. If we think about like plants as being that they all have their own presence and that they have their own stories and philosophies and different things, or that they all are each their own like sort of wisdom, like they explain her as like a grandmother, basically. She's a good listener. She's still, cognitively thinking of all those things. She's learned a lot. People are drawn to her honesty. It says, just as rosemary clears the mind, it also brings clarity and inspires peace. And so, yeah, it says so there's lots of different things to do with rosemary, but you can sort of use it in that way. Again, if you use essential oils at all and you have rosemary, you can use it when you're trying to, get shit done, I would say. If you're trying to get stuff done at work, if you're trying to wake up in the morning, like it can be used for that. Of course, you can also like eat the plant in that way, or, the herb in the morning or things like that. It's just, again, usually when your essential oils are very heavily concentrated, that's why they're called that. And so again, you'd have to eat a lot of rosemary for it to sort of get to the level in which like it is used medicinally. But yeah, so that is some of it. We're also going to talk about, what else was I going to say with the rosemary here? Well, maybe that's it. I'll make sure and look at my references to see if there was anything else to talk about. No, I think that's it for now. So let's get into its relation to the tarot, and then we'll get into some uses for the plant. So I tried to look it up. There was nothing in particular. So like I said, I found decks that have rosemary in them, like an herbal deck, a botanical deck, this Herb Crafter's Tarot deck, which seems very cool, which I like. And I definitely want to get a botanical or herbal deck, especially after doing this season. But I'll have to see if I can find one. But I did find the herb shop in Portland has a website in Portland, Oregon. And so they have a blog post about the Six of Cups with the herbal pairing of rosemary. So when I found that, I went and pulled a bunch of my Six of Cups cards. So I pulled it from the Desert Illuminations Tarot deck, the Therapistu Tarot deck, the Ophidia Rosa Tarot deck, and the Sacerdote Tarot deck. And all of those will be linked in my references for this episode. But like I said, so I pulled those cards, and we do get themes of memories, and sort of this floating ethereal thing. There is like a groundedness, even though this is a cups card. So cups are generally more about fluidity and emotion. Although I guess a lot of our memories and things we think about are emotional. So maybe this makes sense. I was going to read from the Desert Illuminations Tarot deck for this card because I thought it was, seemed very resonant with what I was reading about rosemary. So let me find that. So in this deck, the cups are depicted as jugs. So they're talking about on this card, a flirtatious cowpoke couple is hanging out in their yard filled with a garden of blooming cactus jugs. Behind them, a big rainbow appears in the sky over their humble adobe home after a desert rainstorm. This card is about enjoyment, nostalgia, and memories. There is harmony in your relationships, and much joy is happening around you. Embrace your inner child. Plant a garden. Squeeze your loved ones, go outside in the sunshine, and soak up some vitamin D. Exercise your creativity and perhaps revisit a hobby you've enjoyed as a child. Dance in the rain, go wild. Make sure that you are tapping into positive nostalgia, the kind that fills your heart with happiness. It's so important to have a sense of play at times, otherwise we can get caught up in the boring and mundane aspects of life. So I do feel like that gives very similar energy to what I was reading about in the curandera of air rosemary card that is in the Herb Crafter's Tarot deck, which is that it has this like wiseness about it, but also in a way of like not taking anything too seriously, right? Like if you've lived a long time, you're gonna be like, yeah, everything will be fine, right? Like you have this sort of like wisdom about you, and also you've seen a lot of things, right? You're able to tell like what's important and what's not. And again, rosemary is all about clarity. So right, clearing the mind, but also just like clarity of intention, I would say as well. Yeah, so that is sort of what I saw there. So like I said, on these different decks, there's no rosemary depicted, although I did look through some of my more botanical decks, like the Ophidia Rosa one, but we get a lot of plant energy. 3 of these cards have plants on them, of the ones I pulled from 3 different decks. Like I said, there's sort of memory, nostalgia, like inner child, a like lightness to the cards. And I would say I really feel that with rosemary as well. I use rosemary a lot in cooking. It's really good with like root vegetables, so like carrots, potatoes, roasted like that. I will often make, because I have a large plant of it, I will, if I'm home, like I just pick fresh rosemary and chop it up and use it in dishes. But if I'm giving it to someone else and they don't necessarily want a plant of rosemary, then I will make herbal salt for them, which is just usually you take like 1 part herb, 1 part salt, and you blend it up in a blender, and then it's basically like you have a infused salt to use with food. And rosemary, because it is kind of resinous, if you do cook it like on a grill. Like it can be common for people to like, if you go to a fancy steakhouse, they'll put it on top of the steak as they're sort of like grilling it to infuse some flavor. But it does often like get burned because it is sort of like oily resinous, like it can catch on fire or things like that and get very burnt easily. And so I don't always love to use like the fresh plant if it's something where it's going to catch. Again, like in roasting, if it's on a lower temp, it can be okay, or on the grill. But often I will use this herbal salt like on meats, or like I said, again, on root vegetables. I'll use it in salads, like put it in dressing. Yeah, it's good on a lot of things. So that's like another way that you can interact with the rosemary. So yeah, let's get into some more uses. So I am pulling from my lovely giant book, The Hearth Witch's Compendium, Magical and Natural Living for Every Day. So I'll read their sort of correspondences with rosemary that they talk about for magical herbalism, and then I'll share a couple different ways they say to use it. There were actually like 20 references to rosemary in this book, so I will not be sharing all of them in all the different recipes, but I picked out some fun ones. So like I said, rosemary, it says it's associated with the mind and memory, concentration, meditation, healing, love, marriage, births, funerals, memorial services, protection, dispelling negativity and evil, attracting fairies, spells designed to retain youth, ruled by the sun, the element of fire, and the zodiac sign of Aries. So I am in a very sunny time of year. We are not in a fire sign right now where I am, but of course the sun is fiery and it's hot where I am right now, so that definitely feels resonant. I also looked up that I was trying to look at what day to post this on, because there are certain days of the week that have their own magical correspondences. So Thursday, right, in English, is associated with Thor's Day, which is also associated with Jupiter. And so Jupiter is also, I guess, associated with rosemary, and because of these sort of like some of the correspondences, but also some of the colors, like you have the green, the blue or purple flowers, those are all colors associated with Jupiter. And again, that's like associated with Thursdays. So it can be fun to do, like, again, if you don't have rosemary, you can pull some Six of Cups cards to get a vibe, or you can go get some rosemary or get a plant. You can pull green or blue crystals or other crystals that might have the energy of rosemary, or sort of that clarity cutting through things, which, right, like fire signs, again, can kind of really be more associated with that than water necessarily. But also, yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that. Okay, let's look at some more uses for rosemary. So again, in this book, they have culinary uses, they have like bath and body product uses. So they talk about that you can make, so because rosemary is antimicrobial, it gets used in cleaning things sometimes. So in this one, in the witch's home section of the book, they talk about that you can make an anti-insect potpourri, which has 2 tablespoons of dried mint leaves, 2 tablespoons of dried sage, 2 tablespoons of dried wormwood, and 2 tablespoons of dried rosemary, and 1 tablespoon of dried lemon peel. And you mix the herbs together and put them in a shallow bowl in a warm place to discourage insects, and you can discard them when the scent is gone. So that's like, right, a very natural and sort of passive way to discourage insects from that area, which is kind of cool. Another one that I pulled was this thing called bath tea bags, which is basically just like putting herbs in a cloth, like muslin, cheesecloth, or fabric of some kind, or like a laundry bag, and then putting it in your bath to sort of infuse different things in your bath. So instead of using like a bath bomb or bath salts, which you could also put rosemary in, You can just like put the leaves of different things in a tea bag I've done before, or if you have like a cloth bag of any kind, you can put them in there. So there's one in here that says 17th century bath bag, which like love that. It says 1 part roses, 1 part orange peel, 1 part orange flowers, 1 part jasmine, 1 part bay leaves, 1 part rosemary, 1 part lavender, and 1 part mint. And I bet that smells really good. Rosemary also has this like astringent quality to it. So if you do use it in like skincare or anything, just be mindful of that. And that just means that it's sort of like, I'm like, what does astringent mean? I sort of know what I think it means, but I don't know exactly what the word itself, like what the aspects of the word mean, but it sort of like pulls moisture out of places. That's what I'm thinking of. But now I feel the need to look it up. Astringent, a chemical that shrinks or constricts body tissues. Okay. Yeah, so some people would use it as like a toner probably, because that is like another, like that's the quality you want in like a facial toner. But in here again, in the natural beauty section, it talks about rosemary. Like you can use it as an oil. It prevents hair loss, strengthens the hair, adds luster to dark hair, and smooths damaged hair shafts. It's also useful for treating acne, which again I imagine is sort of like a toner aspect of it. And it says avoid rosemary essential oil during pregnancy. So again, I'm not quite sure what that's about. Probably about the blood circulation aspect of it. So again, always beware. And if you're just eating a little bit of rosemary, like it's probably fine. You don't need to worry too much, but again, if you're trying to consume rosemary at a medicinal level or putting it in your skincare or other, like ingesting it in other ways, putting it on your body, just be mindful of that. Like I said, oh yeah, I did find this other in the Herb Shop PDX blog. They talked about that 6 of Cups and rosemary shows us the power that memories have on who we are and where we're going if we don't define ourselves by our history or linger too long in nostalgia. If we can learn from our memories, then they are indeed sweet gifts like white flowers blooming in golden goblets, which I guess is on the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith image of the card. 6 goblets filled with bright blooming white flowers populate the image. So yeah, that's sort of about the correspondence with rosemary there. All right, so that is everything I have. So let's go ahead and pull a card to see what rosemary has to share with us. And let me grab one of my decks to do that. I'm grabbing the Goddess of Love Tarot deck by Gabriella Herstick and illustrated by Julia Popescu, one of the few decks that I didn't use for today's altar. And I'll give it a quick shuffle here. So rosemary, what do you want us to know? Do you have any other information you want to share with us? Is there anything we need to keep in mind? Is there anything that's going to help us with our clarity? Or not getting too stuck in nostalgia or in the past, and finding, you know, being able to embrace our inner child and play and a lightness in our day today. I pulled the Hanged One, also known as the Hanged Man. I haven't pulled this card in a long time. I love it though. I used to pull it a lot. Let's find it. It's also a very pretty card in this deck. It's like a person hanging upside down like it generally is, but the person has this like maybe calendula flowered like sash on them and the crown. There's dolphins and a porpoise, and there's like waves at their head and then the tree at their feet, and then they're holding a rose and a heart, which I'm like, great vibes. So yeah, it says the goddess associated with this card in this deck is ocean, and the elemental correspondence is water. It says this card is all about to be of service through the heart is a constant reawakening to beauty and truth. But to get to this clarity is dizzying and comes with an unexpected vantage point. The Hanged Man is a card of intensity, often represented as a figure hanging from their ankles, but surrounded by a halo of golden light. This is the awakening that comes with surrender. The Hanged Man has the elemental correspondence of water and thus is tied to ocean, the Yoruban spirit or Orisha of the sweet water, whose love helped bring the universe into creation. Water baptizes, washes away, and generates anew. Ocean is a spirit of compassion and vibrance, the shining diamond after it has been polished. As a river goddess associated with fertility and purification, Ocean embodies the vision of clarity of mind through release and how this can lead to rebirth, blessings, and new beginnings. As the Hanged One, this card is a baptism of rebirth, love, and wisdom. The goddess is gently nudging you to see things from a different perspective, perhaps from the heart or the body instead of the mind. The Hanged One illuminates the power of love to wash away all wounds and to shape your evolution, not by rejecting feelings or pain, but by seeing them as a gift to an understanding of your devotion and your heart. So the affirmation associated with this card is, my heart is washed anew with the sweet magic of love. And the journal question says, what can I view with fresh eyes, and how can I surrender and find goddess wisdom through it? So very funny to me that this talked about the heart, clarity, right? All of these things that are associated with rosemary, even the fertility and rebirth aspect of it. I know there's some correspondence of it being about like birth or rebirth, right? This baptism, the love, the wisdom that's all there. So it sounds like, yeah, we just got to keep that in mind. And also this wateriness of it, right? That rosemary wouldn't necessarily think to associate with water, but that is what kind of keeps coming up. In this card, in the Six of Cups cards, purification, sort of the surrender aspect, and also ocean, right? The goddess ocean in this deck is what's depicted here, which again is like a river goddess. So also associated with water and moving through it. All right, so if you would like to join me on a journey of using the tarot for transformation, you want a deep dive, you want some more one-on-one time with me or group time with me, you want to get to know the cards differently or use them in a way for transformation, the link is in the show notes to indicate your interest in receiving more information about that course. We'll be working together for 12 weeks of calls and journaling to discover what happens when we want to transform our lives through the tarot. Links for the tarot decks I use in this episode will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. You can email me, me@CamilleASaunders.com with your thoughts, questions, and more. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.